Have you ever stopped to witness that specific, almost magnetic scene at a high-end restaurant in Manhattan or a quiet lounge in Los Angeles? A radiant 25-year-old woman, clearly at the absolute peak of her physical glow and social options, leans in with genuine intensity toward a man in his early 40s. To the casual observer, the lazy assumption is always the same. It must be the bank account, the expensive watch, or the sheer convenience of a lifestyle she hasn't built yet. But if you look closer, past the surface-level cliches, you'll see something far more complex and psychologically profound happening in her eyes. She isn't looking at his wallet. She's looking at the way he occupies his seat with an unshakable, silent authority that her younger peers simply cannot replicate. The truth that most men, especially younger ones, refuse to accept is that money is merely a byproduct of the real aphrodisiac, emotional stability. While a 25-year-old man is still navigating his identity crises and reacting to every social tremor, the 40-year-old has already survived his own internal storms and come out the other side with a masculine frame that feels like a sanctuary. In this video, we are going to deconstruct the architecture of certainty and reveal why a woman in her prime would trade youthful vigor for the curated peace of a seasoned veteran. Stick with me until the very end because I'm going to reveal one specific micro-gesture that mature men use subconsciously to communicate absolute protection, a signal that disarms high-value women almost instantly and leaves younger competition completely invisible. My goal today isn't to give you a cheap dating strategy or a list of superficial tricks. It's to provide you with a masterclass in the psychology of authority. We are going to explore why the feminine brain, particularly in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and indecisive, is biologically and psychologically hardwired to seek an external regulator. You will discover how a man's ability to remain unbothered by the world's noise becomes the ultimate currency in the modern relationship market. By the time we finish, you'll understand that her preference isn't about age at all. It's about the relief she feels when she encounters a man who provides a clear direction. This is about moving from the anxiety of trying to be enough to the quiet power of already knowing who you are. Before we dive into the first pillar of this hidden dynamic, I'd love to know who is joining us today for this deep dive into the human psyche. Please take a quick moment to drop a comment below and let me know which city or state across the US you're watching from. Whether it's the fast pace of Chicago or the coastal vibes of Miami, it's always fascinating to see where our community is building their own path to maturity. This connection helps us ground these complex psychological truths in real-world experiences. Now prepare yourself because we are about to peel back the first layer of this mystery. Why men of 25 often feel like boys to women who are looking for a man who says, "Be ready at 8," instead of asking, "Where do you want to go?" Have you ever sat in a high-end restaurant in Manhattan and witnessed a scene that feels almost magnetically charged? You see a radiant 25-year-old woman, at the absolute peak of her physical glow, leaning in with genuine intensity toward a man in his early 40s. To the casual observer, the lazy assumption is always the same. It must be the bank account, the expensive watch, or the convenience of a lifestyle she hasn't built yet. But if you look closer, past the surface-level cliches, you'll see something far more complex and psychologically profound happening in her eyes. She isn't looking at his wallet. She's looking at the way he occupies his seat with an unshakable, silent authority that her younger, more reactive peers simply cannot replicate or even understand. The truth that most men, especially younger ones, refuse to accept is that money is merely a byproduct of the real aphrodisiac, emotional stability. While a 25-year-old man is still navigating his identity crises and reacting to every social tremor, the 40-year-old has already survived his own internal storms and come out the other side with a masculine frame that feels like a sanctuary. In this video, I am going to deconstruct the architecture of certainty and reveal why a woman in her prime would trade youthful vigor for the curated peace of a seasoned veteran. Stick with me until the very end, because I'm going to reveal one specific micro-gesture that mature men use subconsciously to communicate absolute protection, a signal that disarms high-value women almost instantly and leaves the younger competition completely invisible. By the time you finish this video, you will have moved far beyond the superficial gold digger narrative to understand the profound architecture of certainty that truly drives this cross-generational attraction. I am going to show you how to decode the silent language of emotional stability, a trait that acts as a powerful external regulator for a woman's internal world. You will learn to perceive the subtle difference between youthful reactivity and the grounded, unshakable frame of a man who has already won his internal battles. This isn't just about age. It's about a fundamental transformation in how you interpret social dynamics, silences, and the quiet authority that makes a man indispensable. We are dismantling the myth that wealth is the primary draw, replacing it with the far more potent currency of curated psychological peace. We will also uncover the specific microsignals that communicate competence without uttering a single word, allowing you to stop the exhausting cycle of trying to buy or prove your value. Understanding these nuances will prevent the common error of over-explaining or reacting to tests, showing you instead how to provide the decisive direction that high-value women crave. Before we move deeper into these psychological codes, I'd love to take a moment to connect with our community. Please drop a quick comment below letting me know which city or state across the US you're currently watching from. It's truly inspiring to see where you are all applying these insights. This knowledge will refine your ability to read any room, turning confusing social noise into a clear, actionable map of human behavior. As a woman who has spent years dissecting the intricate layers of human attraction and social dynamics, I can tell you that most interpretations of this specific age gap are tragically superficial. When you see a young woman captivated by a mature man, you aren't witnessing a simple transaction. You are observing a sophisticated alignment of psychological needs that goes far deeper than a bank statement. My role here as Ph.D. Emma Madison is to act as your translator, guiding you through the subtle emotional codes that women use to evaluate a man's true worth. We aren't looking for isolated gestures or practiced lines. We are searching for a consistent, unshakable pattern of behavior that suggests a man has mastered his internal world and offers a rare sanctuary of order. To truly understand this magnetic pull, you must realize that a high-value woman at 25 is often navigating a sea of social noise, digital chaos, and the frantic indecisiveness of her younger peers. In this exhausting landscape, the grounded presence of a 40-year-old man acts as a powerful external regulator for her nervous system. It is what we call the masculine frame, a psychological field of force that remains unaffected by external drama or emotional turbulence. You see, the real secret lies in the timing and the silence. It is the way he pauses before responding, the deliberate nature of his movements, and the unhurried authority in his voice. This level of curated peace is impossible to fake because it requires survived crises and a quiet familiarity with one's own identity. During our deep dive today, I want you to pay close attention to the concept of coherence. A younger man might occasionally display strength, but a mature man embodies it as a permanent state of being. We will explore how intention, even when it is slightly ambiguous, creates a layer of mystery that keeps a woman's curiosity alive, while his underlying stability provides the safety she needs to lean in. You must understand that reading these dynamics requires a refined sensitivity to context and repetition. One confident look means nothing if it is followed by a reactive apology. We are moving beyond the visible to the visceral, examining the architecture of certainty that makes a man indispensable. This is about learning to recognize the signs that most men ignore until it is far too late. To truly grasp the magnetic pull that draws a 25-year-old woman toward a 40-year-old man, we must first confront the harsh reality of what I call the Peter Pan syndrome. In today's dating landscape, a staggering number of men in their mid-20s are trapped in a state of arrested development, where indecision and a lack of clear purpose dominate their daily routines. They often seek external validation through digital achievements or social media metrics, treating their lives like a dress rehearsal rather than a definitive performance. To a woman who has reached her peak social value and seeks clarity, this reactive immaturity sounds like a constant, exhausting frequency. She isn't looking for a project to fix. She is searching for the immediate relief provided by a structure that is already solidified. This search for direction leads us directly into the leadership vacuum that defines modern interactions among younger peers. Imagine the silent, mounting frustration of a high-value woman when, After a long week of making decisions, she is met with the eternal, "Where do you want to go?" from a younger partner. For her, this doesn't sound like politeness. It sounds like a lazy, fearful transfer of emotional responsibility. The 40-year-old man, however, eliminates this friction instantly with a single, calm sentence. "Be ready at 8, I've handled the details." This simple command is not about dominance, but about competence. It signals that she can finally deactivate her constant alertness and simply inhabit the moment, trusting that the logistics of her life are in seasoned, capable hands. Yet, this logistical competence is merely the surface layer of a much deeper and more subtle dynamic that we are about to explore: the emotional currency of peace. As we move forward, you will begin to realize that the great differentiator of the mature man is not what he possesses, but what he refuses to let anyone take from him. While the younger man reacts explosively or anxiously to every minor social tremor or perceived slight, the 40-year-old veteran remains like a deep-sea anchor amidst a surface storm. This transition from reactivity to stoicism is what creates the true separation between boys and men. Prepare yourself, because the next step involves the neuroscience of comfort and how a mature masculine presence acts as a biological regulator for the feminine nervous system. The science behind this attraction is rooted in the concept of external emotional regulation. The feminine brain is highly sensitive to environmental safety cues, and in a world saturated with digital noise and social chaos, the 40-year-old man functions as a voltage stabilizer. When she is stressed or overwhelmed, his unshakable calm is not just comforting, it is chemically addictive to her nervous system. He offers what psychologists call secure attachment, a psychological base where she can be vulnerable without the fear that her partner will crumble along with her. This rare ability to absorb chaos and return order is what transforms the mature man into a psychological necessity. She isn't seeking a father figure, but a grounded emotional harbor that the younger man hasn't learned to build. This emotional regulation manifests viscerally in what I describe as competence pornography. Witnessing a 40-year-old man handle a complex problem, whether it is a lost hotel reservation or a high-stakes professional crisis, with a total absence of panic, is one of the most potent signals of value. While the younger man might lose himself in complaints or look to the woman for consolation, the mature man listens, validates the emotion, and presents a pragmatic path forward. This quiet efficacy communicates that he is capable of protecting resources and peace, an evolutionary trigger that bypasses any superficial logic about chronological age. For a woman, there is nothing more seductive than the realization that she is standing next to a man who simply knows exactly what to do. The masculine frame is the invisible field of force that sustains this perception of authority. In a 40-year-old man, this frame has been tested and refined by decades of real-world friction. He does not feel threatened by dissenting opinions, and does not feel the need to prove his masculinity through aggression or shallow displays of wealth. His confidence emanates from a quiet, almost bored familiarity with his own virtues and flaws. When he enters a room, he does not hunt for attention. The attention naturally gravitates toward him because of his psychological density. This unbothered state of being is what instantly disarms a woman's emotional tests, as she feels she has finally encountered a solid barrier where she can safely stop testing and finally start trusting. However, the masculine frame goes far beyond the mind. It infiltrates the very aesthetic of experience, creating a visual contrast that is impossible to ignore. If you observe closely the body language of a man who has already navigated his identity crises, you will see that he occupies physical space in a fundamentally different way. Where the younger man is often restless and hurried, the veteran is deliberate and economical in every movement. This is a more refined and subtle layer of attraction that many men overlook, but that women detect almost subconsciously. Now we are about to enter even more decisive territory: the look of a man who has seen this movie before, and how strategic silence communicates more power than 1,000 words of self-promotion. That look of experience is what I call the aura of pre-selection. The 40-year-old man carries with him the invisible weight of every choice he has made and every woman who has chosen him in the past. He does not exude the anxious, "I hope she likes me" energy, but rather the serene, "I know exactly who I am" vibe. This total absence of neediness creates a vacuum of mystery that is irresistible to a woman at the height of her physical beauty. She realizes that he is not easily impressed by her looks alone, which forces her to invest emotionally to gain his genuine approval. This shift in power is what maintains her long-term attraction, transforming the interaction into a stimulating and deeply challenging intellectual and emotional journey. The crisis test is where the final truth about this dynamic is revealed with brutal clarity. When a real emergency occurs, a car accident, a sudden financial setback, or a family emergency, the younger man often looks to the woman for the emotional regulation he lacks himself. He becomes vulnerable at the wrong moment, burdening her with his own uncontained anxiety. The 40-year-old man, however, understands that his vulnerability must be shared with caution and strategic purpose. He remains the central pillar, allowing her to process her emotions under the safety of his protection. This fundamental difference between looking for a lap and offering a shoulder is what defines who she wants by her side when the party ends and reality demands a higher level of maturity. Many men mistakenly believe that money is the isolated factor, but the real error is failing to see that financial stability is merely a symptom of psychological stability. A young, wealthy man who is internally insecure will be traded for a 40-year-old man who is average, but emotionally unshakable in a heartbeat. The 25-year-old woman is seeking what I call the architecture of certainty. She wants to know that her world will not collapse if he has a bad day at the office or a social setback. The mature man has already built resilience. He knows that failures are temporary and successes are processes. This peace of mind is the most potent aphrodisiac in the modern market because it cannot be bought. It must be earned. Furthermore, there is a powerful social dimension to the cliffhanger of age. A woman in her 20s knows that by choosing a mature, respected man, she elevates her own status in the eyes of her peers and society. While her friends are dealing with childish dramas of unreturned texts and petty jealousy games, she is inhabiting a universe of deep conversations, intentional dinners, and concrete life plans. This contrast creates a silent envy in her social circle, validating her choice and deepening her commitment to the man. She trades the exhaustion of the youthful hunt for the emotional curation of a man who already knows what is valuable and does not waste anyone's time with low-quality psychological games or manipulative behavior. This directness in communication is perhaps one of the most refreshing signals for a modern woman. Younger men often use indirect language and ambiguity as a shield against potential rejection. The 40-year-old man, having faced real rejection many times, has no time for fear. He says what he thinks, expresses what he desires, and defines the terms of the relationship with crystal clarity. This radical honesty is interpreted as a sign of high value and social courage. For her, being with a man who does not hide behind screens or vague excuses is an immense relief. It is the final rest that his certainty provides to her chaotic world, transforming the age gap into a bridge for an authentic, deep, and grounded connection. As we conclude this block of discovery, you must be wondering, is there something even more subtle? Something that happens in absolute silence and seals the fate of this attraction? The answer is yes, and it involves a level of psychological reading that most men will never achieve. We are about to dive into what I call the great revelation of the micro-gesture, a specific subconscious behavior that mature men possess which communicates instant protection without the use of a single word. If you thought the masculine frame was the pinnacle, prepare yourself because the next point is the decisive factor that separates men women merely admire from those they can never forget. What I'm about to reveal is the best-kept secret in the female universe. Let's visualize a Tuesday night. A 25-year-old man sends a vague text at 6 p.m. asking, "Hey, what are you feeling for dinner?" To him, this feels like being a nice guy who respects her opinion, but to her, it's just another mental load she has to carry. Now contrast that with the 40-year-old veteran who simply calls and says, "I've booked a table at that quiet Italian spot you mentioned last month. I'll pick you up at 7:30. In that one sentence, he has eliminated her decision fatigue and demonstrated that he actually listens. While the younger man is fidgeting with his phone, checking for social cues, the mature man is leaning back, holding eye contact just a second longer than comfortable, signaling that he is the destination, not just a passenger. Consider the sudden friction of a canceled flight or a flat tire on a rainy highway. The younger man often defaults to a visible state of agitation, venting his frustration or looking toward the woman for a shared sense of outrage. He mistakenly believes that being vulnerable means leaking his anxiety onto her. The mature man, however, engages in what I call competence pornography. He acknowledges the inconvenience with a calm nod, places his hand firmly on the small of her back, a silent physical anchor, and begins working the solution. He doesn't ask her what to do, he informs her of the next step. This psychological regulation is intoxicating because it proves that when her world feels like it's spinning out of control, his world remains perfectly, resolutely still. Even in the digital realm, the contrast is staggering. The younger man is a hunter of validation, double texting and reacting instantly to every notification like a lab rat seeking a pellet. He is transparent, leaving no room for the mystery that fuels feminine desire. The 40-year-old man understands the power of the strategic pause. His messages are intentional, sparse, and devoid of emojis that scream for approval. When together, he doesn't check his phone or scan the room for a better option. He is entirely present, yet curiously detached from the outcome. This unbothered aura acts as a psychological test she didn't even know she was taking. By refusing to be moved by her beauty or her moods, he forces her to lean in, desperately curious about the man who finally seems bigger than her influence. We must pause here to dismantle the most dangerous oversimplification that plagues this entire discussion: the belief that a woman's interest is a linear transaction for a bank account. If you believe that merely reaching the age of 40 or acquiring a specific net worth grants you an automatic pass into her psychological inner circle, you are operating under a tragic delusion. The attraction we are dissecting is not a reaction to your assets, but a response to your internal architecture. I have seen many wealthy men in their 40s who remain emotionally adolescent, leaking insecurity and seeking constant validation. These men are often bypassed for more grounded peers because they lack the masculine frame. Age is merely a proxy for experience, not a guaranteed substitute for character or poise. Another critical error is misinterpreting the strategic pause as a license for cold indifference or emotional neglect. There is a vast difference between the unbothered silence of a confident man and the defensive stonewalling of an insecure one. Context is the only lens through which these signals retain their value. A woman's temporary pullback or a moment of ambiguity is not always a sign of rejection. It is often an unconscious test to see if your architecture of certainty will crumble under pressure. If you react with panic, anger, or a desperate need for clarification, you have instantly revealed that your maturity was merely a performance. True authority remains steady regardless of the social weather, understanding that her emotional rhythms are natural patterns, not personal attacks. The peak of this magnetic attraction is something we rarely discuss in public: the biological relief of deactivating her constant state of hypervigilance. A 25-year-old woman in her prime is perpetually being hunted, evaluated, and socially tested by a world saturated with digital noise and immature ego. When she finally enters the unshakable frame of a truly mature man, she is not just finding a partner, she is finding an external regulator for her own exhausted nervous system. The great revelation is that she chooses you not for what you can provide, but for who she is allowed to become when she is with you. In your presence, the architecture of your certainty allows her to finally stop performing, stop leading, and stop protecting herself. She seeks the profound permission to finally feel safe. As we close, I want you to realize that you now possess a lens through which very few men ever get to view the world. You've moved past the shallow cliches to understand that the true magnetic north for a woman at her peak is the unshakable density of a man's soul. You now recognize that the architecture of certainty is the only true sanctuary in a chaotic age. However, understanding the source of this attraction is merely the foundation. To truly master this dynamic, you must learn how to defend your frame when it is inevitably challenged. Your journey must continue with my next deep dive into the 3 silent tests every woman uses to verify a man's maturity. Click the video on your screen now to claim the final piece.